My boss's son fired me the second he took control of the company. We don't need people like you anymore, he said. I just smiled and nodded politely. The very next day his father was screaming at him. What the hell were you thinking? Did you even look at the contracts? Because the agreement. We don't need people like you anymore. Connor Mitchell said it without even looking up from his laptop. 26 years old, designer suit, freshly minted MBA from Wharton, and he was firing me, Aubrey Caldwell, from the company I'd spent 16 years building from the ground up. I just smiled, nodded politely, and walked out. Before we continue, if you believe loyalty and hard work should be valued over entitlement, please hit that subscribe button. It's free and helps us share these stories. Now let's see what happens next. What that entitled child didn't know was that his father, Sean Mitchell, had put a clause in my contract 6 years ago. A golden parachute clause. 3 times my annual salary if I was terminated without cause. That's $780,000 he just handed me without even checking the paperwork. But here's the thing that would really cost him. I wasn't the only one with that clause. The very next morning I was sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee when my phone rang. Sean's name lit up the screen, and I could hear the panic in his voice before he even finished his first sentence. Aubrey, what the hell happened yesterday? In the background I heard him screaming at Connor. What were you thinking? Did you even look at the contracts? I took another sip of coffee and smiled. Because the agreement Connor signed when he fired me? It was about to destroy everything he thought he'd inherited. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you how I ended up in that kitchen, listening to Sean Mitchell realize his son had just made $1 million mistake. My name is Aubrey Caldwell. I'm 54 years old, and until yesterday afternoon, I was the Chief Operating Officer at Mitchell Industrial Solutions in Columbus, Ohio. We manufacture precision automation equipment for automotive plants across the country, the kind of machinery that keeps assembly lines running 24 hours a day without breaking down. It's not glamorous work. Nobody writes magazine articles about industrial equipment or gives TED Talks about production efficiency. But it's essential, and it's what I've been doing for the past 16 years. I wasn't the flashy executive who gave keynote speeches at industry conferences. I wasn't the one whose photo appeared in trade publications or who got interviewed about market trends. I was the person who made sure everything actually worked. The one suppliers called at midnight when they had questions about specifications. The one who knew every employee's name and remembered that Marcus's daughter was starting college this year, that Rachel's mother had Alzheimer's, that Denise was saving up for a down payment on a house. My late husband James used to joke that I ran Mitchell Industrial the way I ran our household, with quiet efficiency and a stubborn refusal to let anything fall through the cracks. He'd been dead for 16 years now, killed in a car accident on a rainy November evening when our daughters Emma and Sophie were still in high school. 15 and 17 years old, and suddenly they didn't have a father anymore. The grief nearly destroyed me. I spent months moving through life like I was underwater, everything muffled and distant and wrong. James had been the fun parent, the one who made pancakes on Saturday mornings and knew all the words to Disney songs and could make the girls laugh even when they were being difficult teenagers. I was the practical one, the scheduler, the one who made sure homework got done and bills got paid on time. When he died, I had to become both. And I barely managed to be one. Sean Mitchell hired me 3 months after the accident, when I was 38 years old and desperate for something to pour myself into besides that crushing, endless sadness. I showed up to the interview in a borrowed suit because I'd lost so much weight my own clothes hung off me like I was a child playing dress-up. My resume was impressive on paper. Operations management experience, mechanical engineering degree from Ohio State, proven track record of streamlining production processes. But Sean didn't hire me for my credentials. He hired me because he saw something in my eyes that day. Hunger. Desperation. The kind of determination that comes from having no safety net and everything to prove. I don't need someone who wants this job, he told me, leaning back in his chair in the cramped office that would later become mine. I need someone who can't afford to fail at it. That's the person who'll help me build something that lasts. He'd been right. Within 3 years, I'd streamlined our production process, cutting waste by 30% without sacrificing quality. I'd established relationships with every major automotive manufacturer in the Midwest, learning their needs and their pain points and exactly what they expected from their suppliers. I'd helped grow Mitchell Industrial from a struggling $2 million operation that was barely keeping the lights on to a $15 million success story with contracts stretching from Detroit to Kentucky. Sean promoted me to Chief Operating Officer when I was 43 years old, making me one of the few women in operations leadership in our industry. Came with a title, a raise, and a corner office with windows that actually opened. But more than that, it came with respect. The kind of respect you can't buy or fake or demand. The kind you have to earn through years of showing up early, staying late, and consistently delivering results. It wasn't friendship exactly. Sean kept professional boundaries, never invited me to family dinners or weekend barbecues, never asked about my personal life beyond polite inquiries about how my daughters were doing. But there was something deeper than friendship between us. A mutual understanding. A recognition that we were both builders, both people who took pride in creating something solid and reliable in a world that increasingly valued flash over substance. When my youngest daughter Sophie got accepted to Northwestern University but the financial aid package wasn't enough, Sean personally restructured my compensation package to make it possible. No big announcement, no fanfare, just a quiet conversation in his office one afternoon and updated paperwork that gave my daughter the education she deserved. I tried to thank him, but he'd waved me off. Your work speaks for itself, Aubrey. This is just making sure the numbers reflect that. When his wife Marie battled breast cancer 5 years ago, I returned the favor in the only way I knew how. I coordinated the entire company's schedule so Sean could be with her for every chemotherapy session, every doctor's appointment, every bad day when she couldn't get out of bed and needed him beside her. We juggled meetings and rearranged production schedules and made it work because that's what you do for people who matter. Marie survived, thank God. And Sean never forgot what I'd done during those awful months. We built something together over those 16 years, Sean and I. Not just a company but a culture. A place where people mattered, where quality wasn't sacrificed for quarterly profit margins, where a handshake agreement still meant something in an industry increasingly dominated by lawyers who'd never touched a piece of machinery in their lives. My daughters grew up during those years. Emma became a nurse, working nights in the ICU at Cleveland Clinic and calling me every Sunday morning like clockwork. Sophie became a third-grade teacher in Chicago, sending me photos of her students' artwork and stories about the funny things 6-year-olds say when they're trying to understand the world. Mitchell Industrial became my second family. The place where I'd rebuilt myself after losing James. The place where I'd proved I was more than just a widow struggling to survive. And then 8 months ago everything started to shift. Connor Mitchell came back from Wharton Business School with his fancy MBA and his 50-page reports about disrupting the industry and optimizing legacy operations. He was Sean's only child, 26 years old, spoiled in that particular way that comes from being the sole focus of wealthy parents' attention and expectations. He'd spent most of his 20s bouncing between business school and a tech startup in Miami that had burned through $2 million of his father's money before collapsing spectacularly. The startup had promised to revolutionize restaurant delivery using drone technology. It lasted 18 months before regulatory issues and basic logistical problems. Turns out drones can't actually carry hot food through city traffic safely. Killed it completely. But Connor talked about the failure like it was a learning experience, a necessary step on his entrepreneurial journey. He showed up at Mitchell Industrial with that particular brand of confidence that comes from never having faced real consequences for being wrong. Sean asked me to mentor him. To show him how the company actually worked, from the production floor to the supplier relationships to the client accounts that kept us profitable. I agreed because Sean asked, and because part of me hoped that Connor might actually learn something if he spent enough time seeing how things really operated. Connor shadowed me for 2 weeks, following me through the production floor with his tablet and his expensive noise-canceling headphones, asking surface-level questions about processes he didn't really want to understand. He'd interrupt production meetings to suggest innovations that showed he'd fundamentally misunderstood what we did. He'd talk about implementing AI and automation without grasping that our clients paid premium prices specifically because we offered customization and precision that algorithms couldn't replicate. After 2 weeks, he submitted a 50-page proposal to Sean recommending we outsource 40% of our manufacturing to cut costs. The presentation was slick, full of charts and graphs and projected profit margins that looked impressive if he didn't know anything about how industrial equipment actually worked. I pulled Sean aside in his office one afternoon, the autumn sun streaming through the blinds, casting long shadows across his desk. If we do this, we'll lose quality control, I told him quietly, keeping my voice professional even though I wanted to shake him. Our reputation is built on precision. One batch of defective components and we'll lose contracts worth millions. You know this, Sean. You built this company on reliability. He'd nodded slowly, his weathered hands folded on the desk between us. I know, Aubrey. I know. Connor's young. He'll learn. He just needs time. But Connor didn't want to learn. He wanted to prove himself. And he was relentless. He showed up to every board meeting with new slide decks and financial projections that looked impressive to people who'd never actually run a production floor, who'd never had to call a client at 3 a.m. because a machine failed and an entire assembly line was down. Meeting by meeting, I watched Sean's resolve weaken under the pressure of his son's ambition. And 5 weeks ago, everything came to a head. Sean called an emergency leadership meeting on a Tuesday afternoon. He was 62 years old, at least another good decade of work in him, maybe more, but he looked exhausted when he stood at the head of the conference table. Worn down. Defeated in a way I'd never seen before, not even during Marie's worst days with cancer. I'm stepping down as CEO, he announced to the room full of people who'd built this company alongside him. Effective immediately. Connor's ready to take over. It's time for the next generation to take Mitchell Industrial into the future. His eyes never quite met mine during that speech. Connor stood beside his father, already dressed like he owned the place, wearing that confident smile that made my stomach turn. After the meeting ended and everyone filed out making awkward small talk and offering congratulations that didn't quite reach their eyes, I lingered near the door. Sean, I said quietly. He looked up from the papers he was pretending to organize, and for just a moment I saw something raw in his face. Regret maybe. Or just exhaustion so complete it had worn through every defense he'd built over 40 years of running a business. It's done, Aubrey, he said, his voice flat. He's my son. This company is his legacy. I nodded once and walked out, feeling like I'd just watched something important die. That was 5 weeks ago. Yesterday, Connor called me into his office. The same office that used to be Sean's, though Connor had already redecorated with minimalist furniture and motivational posters about innovation, and fired me. And this morning I was sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee and listening to Sean Mitchell realize that his son had just made the most expensive mistake of his short career. Aubrey, Sean's voice was strained, desperate in a way I'd never heard before. Don't do anything yet. Please. Let me fix this. I set my coffee cup down on the kitchen table, watching the steam rise in the morning light. Through my window, I could see my neighbor Mrs. Chin watering her garden like it was any other Tuesday morning. Like the world hadn't shifted overnight. It's already done, Sean, I said quietly. Patricia Vance is handling it. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear him breathing on the other end. Then, barely above a whisper, the golden parachute clause. Yes. Oh God. His voice cracked. He didn't check, did he? Please tell me he at least looked at the contracts before. He didn't. Another long pause. I could almost see Sean in his home office, the one with family photos covering the walls, realizing exactly what his son had done. When he spoke again, his voice was hollow. How many of you had protected contracts? I took a slow breath. This was the part that would really hurt. 4 of us. Me, Rachel, Marcus, and Denise. All with the same clause you insisted on 6 years ago. 3 times annual salary for termination without cause. I heard him calculating in real time. My $780,000. Rachel's engineering director salary would be around $690,000. Marcus's $510,000. Denise's $600,000. Nearly $2.5 million in severance penalties that Connor had triggered in a single afternoon. For a company with $8 million in liquid reserves, it was catastrophic. That's not even the worst part, I added, my voice steady. What do you mean? The dread in his question was palpable. Connor terminated all 4 of us without cause and without documentation. No written warnings. No performance improvement plans. No paper trail whatsoever. Patricia's filing an age discrimination suit by end of business today. We have emails, meeting notes, and witness testimony showing systematic termination of employees over 45, all replaced by consultants under 30. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard something slam, a fist on a desk maybe, and Sean's voice, distant but clear. "Connor, get back in here. Now." "I have to go," he said to me, his voice tight. "But Aubrey." "Yes. This isn't over. We'll talk again." The line went dead. I sat there for a moment staring at my phone, trying to process what I was feeling. It wasn't satisfaction exactly. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was something colder, more calculated. I'd spent 16 years building Mitchell Industrial, and in one afternoon Connor had shown me exactly how much that loyalty was worth to him. Now he was going to learn what it cost. My phone buzzed with an incoming text. "Rachel, are you seeing this? Check your email." I opened my laptop, still sitting at the kitchen table in my pajamas, and pulled up my personal email account. Rachel had forwarded an internal memo from Mitchell Industrial, sent just 20 minutes ago. The subject line read, "Organizational restructuring, immediate implementation." I scrolled through it, my coffee going cold beside me. The memo announced the retirement of 4 senior leaders: myself, Rachel, Marcus, and Denise, and the immediate appointment of interim leadership. Every single replacement was under 35. Connor had brought in his business school network, consultants from a firm in Chicago, none of whom had ever worked in industrial manufacturing. The memo praised our years of dedicated service, while simultaneously suggesting we were obstacles to necessary innovation and competitive modernization. It was corporate speak for, "The old guard is gone, the future starts now." I read it twice, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Then my phone rang again. This time it was Rachel. "Did you read it?" Her voice was shaking. "Did you see what he wrote about us? Like we're dinosaurs who couldn't adapt." "I saw it," I said calmly. "Aubrey, I gave 7 years to that company. I turned down offers from Tesla and SpaceX because you convinced me Mitchell was building something special. And this is how it ends. With a memo that makes us sound like we were holding the company back." I could hear tears in her voice and something inside me hardened. "Rachel, did you keep the email from last month? The one where Connor asked you to sign off on the outsourcing proposal? The one where I explained in detail why it would compromise quality control?" "That's the one. I have it." "Why?" "Forward it to Patricia Vance. Today. Along with any other documentation showing you raised concerns about Connor's proposals and were ignored or overruled." There was a pause. "You're building a case." "We're building a case," I corrected. "All of us. This isn't just about the severance money, Rachel. This is about making sure what he did has consequences." After we hung up, I made myself a fresh cup of coffee and opened my laptop again. I drafted an email to Bernard Whitmore, CEO of Apex Automation Technologies. Bernard and I had crossed paths at industry conferences for years. 6 months ago, he'd approached me with an offer: a significant salary increase and an equity stake if I'd consider leaving Mitchell Industrial. I'd declined out of loyalty to Sean. I'd kept Bernard's business card though. Filed it away in my desk drawer just in case. Now I pulled up his contact information and started typing. "Bernard, I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing to follow up on our conversation from the spring. My circumstances have changed and I'd be interested in discussing the opportunity you mentioned. Would you have time for a call this week? Best regards, Aubrey." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I called Marcus. He answered on the first ring. "Aubrey, tell me you got that memo too. Tell me I'm not the only one who thinks this is insane." "You're not the only one," I assured him. "How are you holding up?" "Honestly, I'm furious. I've been with Mitchell for 12 years. Started on the production floor, worked my way up to supervisor. I hired most of the team we have now. And Connor fires me via email at 8 in the morning, then sends out a company-wide memo 2 hours later making it sound like I was the problem." "I know," I said quietly. "But Marcus, I need you to focus. Do you have documentation? Performance reviews, emails showing your work quality, anything that proves you were doing your job well?" "I have everything. I keep copies of all my quarterly reviews." "Why?" "Because we're going to need it. Patricia Vance is building a case, and the more documentation we have showing we were terminated without cause, the stronger our position." "You think we can actually win this?" I thought about Connor sitting in that office yesterday, barely looking at me as he fired me. Thought about the arrogance in his voice, the assumption that he could just sweep away 16 years of my work like it meant nothing. I think we already have, I said. By late afternoon I'd spoken with Denise as well. She'd been the most emotional of all of us, crying through most of our phone call. Mitchell Industrial wasn't just a job for her. It was where she'd rebuilt her life after a difficult divorce 5 years ago. The quality control lab was her kingdom, and Connor had given it to a 29-year-old consultant who'd never worked in manufacturing quality assurance. What am I supposed to do now? She asked, her voice breaking. I'm 51 years old, Aubrey. Who's going to hire me? Someone who values experience, I told her firmly. And Denise, this isn't over. We're going to fight this. All of us together. That evening I sat down with Patricia Vance via video call. She'd spent the day reviewing all 4 of our employment contracts, along with the documentation we'd sent over. This is even better than I thought, she said, adjusting her glasses as she looked at her screen. Connor Mitchell didn't just violate your contracts. He created a textbook case of age discrimination. 4 employees, all over 45, all terminated on the same day without cause, all replaced by consultants under 35. The pattern is undeniable. What happens next? I asked. I file formal severance claims for all 4 of you by end of week. The company has 30 days to respond. Given the contract language, they'll have to pay. It's not negotiable. These golden parachute clauses are airtight. But beyond that, I'm filing a discrimination complaint with the EOC. That investigation will take longer, but it puts additional pressure on Mitchell Industrial. And if they fight it? Patricia smiled. Then we take them to court where discovery will be very interesting. Every email, every meeting note, every decision Connor made in his 5 weeks as CEO becomes part of the public record. Companies usually settle rather than face that kind of exposure. After the call ended, I sat in my quiet living room as darkness fell outside. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Mom, Emma told me what happened. Are you okay? Do you need me to come home? I smiled, typing back. I'm okay, sweetheart. Really? This is just a change, not a catastrophe. Focus on your students. I'll call you this weekend. But sitting there in the darkness, I realized something had shifted inside me. Yesterday, when Connor fired me, I'd felt shock and betrayal. Today I felt something different. Clarity. For 16 years, I'd poured everything into Mitchell Industrial. My time, my expertise, my loyalty. I'd sacrificed weekends and holidays. I'd missed Emma's nursing school graduation because we had a client crisis. I'd postponed vacations because production schedules couldn't wait. And Connor Mitchell had dismissed all of it in 5 words. We don't need you anymore. Fine. He'd learn soon enough exactly what he'd lost. My phone lit up with an email notification. Bernard Whitmore had responded, Aubrey, great to hear from you. I'm available tomorrow at 2 p.m. for a call. Looking forward to catching up. Bernard. I closed my laptop and went to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. I kept thinking about the production floor at Mitchell Industrial, about the equipment I'd maintained and the systems I'd built and the people I'd trained. I thought about Crawford Automotive's contract renewal coming up in 6 weeks, and how Connor's consultants had no idea how to handle that relationship. I thought about all the institutional knowledge that had walked out the door yesterday, and how long it would take Connor to realize what he'd lost. Somewhere across town, in the house he'd grown up in, Connor Mitchell was probably celebrating his first day as CEO. Probably convinced he'd made the tough decisions necessary to modernize the company. He had no idea what was coming. The next morning I woke at 5:30 out of pure habit. My body didn't care that I no longer had a job to go to. 16 years of early production meetings and client calls had programmed my internal clock, and it refused to adjust just because Connor Mitchell had decided I was obsolete. I made coffee in the pre-dawn darkness, standing at my kitchen counter and watching through the window as the sky gradually shifted from black to deep blue to that pale gray that comes just before sunrise. The neighborhood was silent except for a dog barking somewhere down the street. My phone sat on the counter beside me, screen dark. I'd turned off notifications last night after the flood of texts from former colleagues. Some offering sympathy, others asking what really happened, a few quietly inquiring if I knew of any job openings elsewhere. Word traveled fast in our industry. At exactly 7 o'clock my phone lit up. Sean Mitchell. I stared at his name on the screen through one ring. 2, 3. My finger hovered over the answer button, and for a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail. Let him sit with the uncertainty the way I'd sat with it yesterday, packing my office into a cardboard box while younger employees pretended not to watch. But on the fourth ring I answered. Aubrey. His voice hit me immediately, ragged, desperate, nothing like the composed businessman I'd worked alongside for 16 years. What happened yesterday? I just found out this morning. Connor didn't tell me he was. He stopped, seeming to choke on whatever words came next. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the silence stretch between us. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Chin from next door in her bathrobe, bending down to pick up her newspaper. You should ask your son, I said finally, keeping my voice even. I did. There was a heavy pause. He said you were blocking innovation, that you refused to implement his efficiency recommendations and were undermining his authority with the senior team. Something cold and sharp twisted in my chest. So that's how Connor was spinning it. Not that he'd impulsively fired 4 people without checking their contracts, but that we were obstacles to his grand vision. Did he mention that I was fired without warning? I asked, still maintaining that carefully neutral tone. Without documentation? Without cause? Silence. Did he mention that he eliminated the entire senior leadership team in a single day? Ray, Marcus, Denise. Everyone who built this company with you, Sean. Gone by lunchtime. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear Sean's breathing on the other end, ragged and uneven like he'd just finished running a mile. Jesus Christ. His voice cracked. All of them? He fired all of you. All of us, I confirmed. Then I heard it, something slamming in the background. A fist hitting a desk maybe, or a hand slapping against a wall. Sean's voice came through, distant but clear, shouting, Connor, get in here. Now. There was rustling, movement, maybe a door opening. Then Sean was back on the line, his breathing harsh. Aubrey, listen to me. Don't do anything yet. Please. Just give me 24 hours to fix this. I can reverse the terminations, put everyone back in their positions, make this right. It's already done, Sean. I set my coffee cup down on the counter with a soft click. Patricia Vance is handling it. His exhale was long and shaky, and I could picture him closing his eyes, pinching the bridge of his nose the way he did when dealing with particularly bad news from a supplier or client. The golden parachute clause, he said quietly. Oh God, Aubrey, please tell me he at least checked the contracts first. Please tell me he didn't just. He didn't. Another pause, this one filled with the sound of Sean's realization settling in. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. How many of you had protected contracts? I watched a bird land on my back fence, small and brown and utterly unconcerned with the conversation that was about to change everything. 4 of us. Me, Rachel, Marcus, and Denise. All with the same clause you insisted on 6 years ago when Apex tried to poach me. 3 times annual salary for termination without cause. I could almost hear him calculating. My $780,000. Rachel's $690,000. Marcus's $510,000. Denise's $600,000. The numbers adding up in his head, each one another nail in the coffin of his son's brief tenure as CEO. The silence stretched so long I genuinely thought he might have hung up. That's nearly $2.6 million, he finally said, his voice hollow. Yes. For a company with $8 million in liquid reserves, it wasn't just expensive. It was catastrophic. But I wasn't finished. That's not even the worst part, Sean. What do you mean? The dread in his voice was palpable, like he was bracing for another blow. I picked up my coffee cup again, wrapping both hands around it even though it was a warm October morning and I didn't need the heat. Old habits. Connor terminated all 4 of us without cause and without documentation. No written warnings. No performance improvement plans. No email trail showing we were underperforming or refusing to follow directives. Nothing. Just walked us out the door. I paused, letting that sink in. Patricia's filing an age discrimination suit this afternoon. We have emails showing Connor specifically targeted employees over 45. We have meeting notes where he referred to the senior team as legacy deadweight. We have witness testimony from at least 6 current employees who heard him say we needed fresh blood and younger perspectives. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could picture Sean in his home office, the room he'd retreated to after stepping down as CEO, the the space filled with photos of Marie and Connor at various ages, industry awards collecting dust on shelves, the desk where he'd built a company from nothing over 4 decades. All of it potentially destroyed because his son couldn't be bothered to read a contract before signing termination papers. When Sean finally spoke, his voice was cold in a way I'd never heard before. Not angry. Not desperate. Just cold and flat and done. "I'll call you back." The line went dead. I stood there in my kitchen, phone in hand, watching the sky continue to brighten outside my window. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me just felt tired. Then I did something I'd been thinking about since yesterday afternoon, when I'd sat in my car with that cardboard box of personal items and realized my entire professional identity had just been packed into a container small enough to fit in a trunk. I scrolled through my contacts and found a name I'd saved 6 months ago but never called. Bernard Whitmore, CEO of Apex Automation Technologies, Mitchell Industrial's biggest competitor. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm and unsurprised. "Aubrey Caldwell. I was wondering when you'd reach out." I smiled despite myself. "Still interested in that conversation we had in Detroit? About you joining Apex?" He didn't even hesitate. "Absolutely. When can you start?" 3 months, I said, walking to my kitchen table and sitting down with my coffee. "After my severance clears and my non-compete clause expires." "And your team?" Bernard asked, and I could hear the shift in his tone, from friendly to business. "Rachel, Marcus, Denise. You think they'd come with you?" I thought about the text from last night. About Rachel's message, "I can't believe he did this to us." About Marcus writing, 12 years and I get fired by email." About Denise's simple, "I don't know what to do." People who'd given everything to Mitchell Industrial, only to be dismissed like outdated equipment. "I think they're going to be very motivated to explore new opportunities," I said carefully. Bernard was quiet for a moment, and I could almost hear him thinking, calculating what it would mean to bring on Mitchell Industrial's entire senior leadership team. The institutional knowledge alone was worth millions. The client relationships, supplier connections, production expertise. It was everything a competitor would want. "Send me your resume," he said finally. "And if they're interested. We'll set up formal interviews, but between you and me, Aubrey, I've been trying to hire you for 6 months. This is just the excuse I needed." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table as the morning sun finally broke over the horizon, flooding my small kitchen with golden light. I thought about what Connor Mitchell didn't understand about institutional knowledge. It wasn't just about knowing which buttons to push or which vendors to call when a machine broke down. It was about relationships built over years. Trust that couldn't be replicated in a PowerPoint presentation. The unwritten agreements that kept business flowing smoothly even when contracts didn't cover every contingency. It was knowing that Crawford Automotive's purchasing director, Michael Brennan, preferred phone calls to emails because he liked to hear your voice when discussing technical specifications. It was remembering that our main supplier in Detroit had a son with special needs and would always prioritize orders if you called him directly instead of going through the automated system. It was understanding that the machine on production line 3 made a specific clicking sound exactly 48 hours before it needed maintenance. And if you caught it then, you avoided a breakdown that could cost tens of thousands in lost production time. Connor thought he could replace all of that with an MBA from Wharton and confident swagger. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Just got off the phone with Patricia. She says our case is solid. Did you really call Apex?" I typed back, "Yes. Sending you Bernard's contact info now. Call him." 3 dots appeared immediately, showing she was typing. Then, "Are we really doing this?" I looked around my kitchen. The same kitchen where I'd raised 2 daughters alone, where I'd celebrated promotions and cried over setbacks, where I'd rebuilt my life after James died. "Yes," I typed back. "We're really doing this." 2 weeks passed in a strange kind of limbo. I went through the motions of unemployment. Updated my resume, organized my home office, finally cleaned out the garage I'd been meaning to tackle for 3 years. But mostly I waited. Waited for Patricia to file the paperwork. Waited for my severance check to clear. Waited for the 3-month non-compete clock to start ticking down. And I watched. Denise had maintained friendships with several people still working at Mitchell Industrial. The kind of relationships that survive corporate upheaval because they're built on genuine connection rather than professional convenience. Sarah from accounting. Tim from the production floor. Jennifer, who'd been Denise's assistant in the quality control lab for 5 years. They started sending her information. Not because she asked for it, but because they were scared and confused and needed someone to tell them what was happening to their company. On a Wednesday afternoon, I was meeting with Patricia in her downtown office when my phone buzzed. Denise's name appeared with a text. "You need to see this." 3 photo attachments loaded slowly on my screen. Patricia set down the contract she'd been reviewing and leaned over my shoulder as I enlarged the first image. It was an internal memo dated 2 days ago, marked confidential, management only. The subject line read, "Production status update, urgent." I read through it twice, my coffee going cold on Patricia's desk beside me. Crawford Automotive's latest order, precision hydraulic components for their new assembly line in Kentucky, was 3 weeks behind schedule. 3 weeks. The memo blamed transition challenges and legacy system inefficiencies, which was corporate speak for, "Nobody here knows what they're doing anymore." The second photo was worse. A quality control report showing that a shipment to Detroit had failed inspection. Defective components. An entire batch that had to be recalled and replaced, costing Mitchell Industrial not just money but reputation. In our industry, quality control failures were death sentences. Automotive plants couldn't afford downtime because a supplier shipped faulty parts. The third photo made my stomach tighten. It was an email chain between Connor and 2 of his consultant friends, discussing how to handle Crawford Automotive's contract renewal. The purchasing director, Michael Brennan, had apparently requested a meeting to discuss concerns about recent quality issues and delivery delays. Connor's response, visible in the email thread, "Set up the meeting. We'll smooth this over with better pricing. Everyone responds to discounts." I looked up at Patricia, who was reading over my shoulder with her reading glasses perched on her nose. "He has no idea," I said quietly. "No idea about what?" "Crawford doesn't care about pricing. They pay premium rates because they need guaranteed quality and delivery. Michael Brennan will walk away from a relationship over reliability concerns, even if Connor offers him components at cost." Patricia sat back in her chair, fingers steepled under her chin. "This is excellent for our case. It shows immediate operational damage directly resulting from the terminations. The company's already struggling without the institutional knowledge you 4 provided." He paused, studying my face. "How does that make you feel?" It was the kind of question a therapist might ask, and I appreciated that Patricia understood this was about more than just legal strategy. "Honestly," I set my phone down on her desk, "I don't know yet." That evening I met